Celebrities are also people who sometimes get into trouble when neither their status nor money can save them. In this video, we will tell you about 10 stars who have been in prison and who have managed to eventually change their lives for the better. Criminal stars, top 10 celebrities who have been in jail.
We have you outnumbered. What are you gonna do? Kill us all by yourself?
Danny Trejo, the American actor of Mexican descent, is known mainly for the numerous roles as villains. Trejo's filmography includes more than 300 works, among which are From Dusk Till Dawn, Con Air, Spy Kids, Desperado, and Machete. And this is despite the fact that he came to the movies later in life, leaving his criminal past behind. The son of Mexican immigrants, grew up in a poor area of Los Angeles, got involved in street fights when he was still a child, and wanted to pursue a professional boxing career. At the age of 8, Danny started smoking marijuana, according to the actor, at the suggestion of his own uncle. By the age of 12, Trejo could get any kind of drugs, including the hard ones. Together with his uncle, the boy began to engage in robberies, and when he faced the choice whether to become a drug dealer or a laborer, he chose the first and plunged headlong into the world of crime. From the age of 15, he was constantly arrested and brought to justice as a juvenile delinquent. The young man spent a total of 10 years in a reformatory and in 6 California prisons for drug possession and armed robbery. In prison, Trejo graduated from high school and began boxing again, becoming the light and middleweight champion, first in 3 prisons and then the champion of Pennsylvania. He was not an exemplary prisoner. He fought with inmates, sold drugs, and tried to escape more than once. While serving a 5-year sentence in Soledad Prison in May 1968, Trejo provoked a riot and attacked a warden, after which he was sent to solitary confinement. Danny faced either life imprisonment or the death penalty, so he promised that he would extol the name of God every day and help others if he was allowed to die with dignity. None of the inmates testified against Danny, and after 3 months, Trejo emerged from solitary confinement as a different person. He stopped using drugs, enrolled in the 12-step rehab program, and began helping other inmates. In 1969, Danny Trejo was released, and in 1985, he accidentally got into the movies. He taught boxing to an actor on the set of Runaway Train, but Trejo's appearance attracted the director's attention. That's how he got his first role, which marked the beginning of a successful acting career. Danny doesn't hide his past. He wants to show people by his example that they can fight any addiction and achieve a better life.
I was playing for Mr. Lee and for that gentleman over there. I'm not actually a gambler.
Mark Wahlberg. He became famous for acting in The Perfect Storm, Planet of the Apes, The Departed, Transformers, and others. He was nominated twice for an Oscar and 3 times for a Golden Globe. Mark grew up in a large family and, like his other brothers and sisters, gave a lot of trouble to his parents. According to Mark, he had about 20 to 25 police bookings in his youth. At the age of 13, he got registered with the police for using and selling drugs, and at age 15, he was held liable for bullying African-American schoolchildren. He threw stones at them and insulted them. At the age of 16, being high on drugs, Wahlberg robbed a pharmacy and then attacked 2 adult Vietnamese. He knocked out the first one by punching him with a log and severely hit the other one in the eye. For many years, Wahlberg believed that the man lost an eye because of him, but in 2014, the man admitted that he had lost his sight with the eye way earlier during the Vietnam War. Mark claims that he doesn't remember the incident as he passed out even before the police came for him. Wahlberg was charged with attempted murder and sentenced to 2 years in prison. Although he was only 16, Mark chose to serve his sentence in a correctional colony for adults, hoping for an early release. Mark got attacked in the first minutes spent in prison, after which he realized that he didn't want such a life. As a result, Mark was bailed out after only 45 days in the colony. After his release, Wahlberg, along with his brother, began a music career and then a modeling career until finally he came to acting. Wahlberg became a public person, but having a difficult temper, he couldn't avoid controversial stories. He spoke sharply on television about people of non-traditional sexual orientation, behaved defiantly, and initiated fights several times, but still, he never returned to jail and became an exemplary family man and public figure over time. He also graduated from high school at 42, which he dropped out in the 9th grade. In 2014, the actor tried to get a pardon in his case, which caused a public controversy, so the petition was eventually rejected. Mark Wahlberg still gets reminded of his racist past when he joined the mourning for the African-American George Floyd, who was killed during his arrest. He received a wave of criticism for the mistakes of his youth.
You recognize those who did their time, turned their lives around, made something of themselves?
Robert Downey Jr. Before becoming the Marvel Cinematic Universe hero Tony Stark, Robert Downey Jr. has come a long way in the fight against drug addiction. He was born into the family of art film star Robert Downey Sr. and actress Elsie Downey. The boy's entire childhood passed, in his own words, surrounded by alcoholics and drug addicts. When Robert was only 6 years old, his father let him try marijuana for the first time, and the boy came to persistent drug addiction and health problems by the age of 8. From his youth, Downey Jr. has starred in films and was recognized as one of the most promising actors of the younger generation. However, after switching to hard drugs, addiction began to seriously affect his work. After several attempts to undergo rehabilitation and escape from clinics, in 1996, Robert was fired right on the set of a movie. His wife left him, so he was wasting all his money on drugs. In the same year, Downey Jr. was arrested for possession of drugs and weapons. A month later, being released on parole, he broke into a neighbor's house and fell asleep in one of the beds. For this, he received a 3-year suspended sentence and was sentenced to mandatory drug testing, but failed one of the tests and spent 6 months in the Los Angeles County Jail. His celebrity status only added to the problems in prison. The actor had to constantly fight, receiving numerous abrasions and cuts. He even passed out in a pool of his own blood a couple of times. After a fight with 3 prisoners, Robert received a serious wound and was transferred to solitary confinement. After his release, the court gave the actor probation and sent him to a rehab center. However, after Robert violated the conditions again and didn't undergo a mandatory test, he was sentenced to 3 years in prison and observation in an addiction treatment center. In prison, the actor worked in a cafeteria 5 days a week, handing out food, washing dishes, and cleaning pans. Downey Jr. was released a year later on $5,000 bail. But even after that, the actor constantly appeared in the headlines of the papers, and after another arrest in 2001, he became an outcast in the world of cinema. A helping hand to Robert was offered by his friend Mel Gibson, who invited him to star in The Singing Detective. Downey Jr. finally quit drugs after he had met his future wife. She made a condition that she would marry him only if he completely put an end to drugs. In 2015, Robert Downey Jr. was officially pardoned, proving that he had radically improved his life.
I love seeing all my favorite looks on the runway inspired by me, the OG.
Paris Hilton. In the early 2000s, the former heiress of the Hilton empire was one of the main gossip heroines and constantly appeared in top-rated programs and television shows. The avid party girl began to have problems with the police in September 2006 when she was pulled over while drunk driving. She was charged with a $1,500 fine and a probationary period of 36 months. But in February 2007, Paris was detained again, this time for driving with a revoked driver's license. The following month, she was caught speeding and driving at night with her headlights off. The court found the socialite guilty of violating the conditions of the probation and sentenced her to 45 days in prison. However, the term was later reduced to 23 days due to the overcrowding of the prison and the good behavior of the inmate. Paris was brought to Los Angeles prison by relatives right after the MTV Movie Awards ceremony, but she was transferred to home detention 4 days later due to poor health. However, the judge considered that there was no reason for Paris's home detention and ordered her to be returned to jail. According to media reports, Paris lived in a special block where police, officials, and celebrities are usually held, and no cellmates were brought to her. Even while in prison, Hilton was giving radio interviews in which she shared her impressions and feelings. After prison, Hilton was stripped of her driver's license until 2009, and her Bentley was confiscated. Up until 2010, the girl was detained several times while possessing drugs, but didn't go to jail. Now Paris has given up the image of a stupid blonde. She runs her own business and has also released a documentary about her life.
So why'd you get locked away?
Tax evasion.
Wesley Snipes. The American actor, known for his role as vampire hunter Blade, attracted the attention of law enforcement agencies when he was already famous all over the world in 2006. Wesley Snipes was charged with conspiracy to commit tax fraud and defraud the government, as well as 6 times of tax filing fraud. Forged tax returns in 1996 and 1997 allowed him to evade taxes in the amount of $11.3 million. The government also accused Snipes of not filing tax returns between 1999 and 2004, and finally the actor submitted fictitious checks for a total of $14 million to the federal tax office. In response to the accusations, Snipes said that he simply didn't understand all the intricacies of taxation in the United States. But ignorance of the law does not absolve from responsibility. Although Wesley was acquitted at a court hearing on February 1, 2008, on charges of conspiracy to defraud the government and filing a fake tax return, 3 times of tax filing fraud remained. In April, he was sentenced to 3 years in prison, the maximum term for tax evasion, despite his full admission of guilt and willingness to pay off the debt. During the appeals, Snipes was kept at home, but in 2010, he still had to go to the Pennsylvania State Prison. In custody, the actor, along with several friends, took up yoga, asking the management to provide them with a special room for classes. Snipes was released from federal prison on April 2, 2013, and ended his home detention period on July 19, 2013. After that, the actor immediately returned to work, starred in the sequel to the Expendables franchise, and never violated the law since then.
Same as the last time you checked. And the time before that?
Michelle Rodriguez, the American actress of Puerto Rican and Dominican descent, is best known for her roles in Lost, Machete, Resident Evil, Avatar, and of course, the Fast and the Furious film series. Like her character Letty, Michelle loves to drive fast, granted while being drunk. So in 2003, Rodriguez was charged with 2 road accidents. She hit a motorcyclist and left the scene of the accident, and a few months later, she exceeded the speed limit when driving through an intersection, being drunk. Then her driver's license was taken away from her, but the next year the girl got behind the wheel drunk again, got into an accident and fled. She was sentenced to 48 hours in custody in order to perform community service in 2 morgues and hospitals in New York City. After completing a 3-month alcohol rehabilitation program, she received 3 years probation. In 2005, while filming the TV show Lost in Hawaii, Rodriguez was fined several times for speeding and arrested in December for drunk driving. She was sentenced to a $500 fine and 5 days in prison. The incident was in violation of her probation in Los Angeles, so she was sentenced to 60 more days in prison, a 30-day alcohol rehab program, and 30 days of community service. But she spent only 4 hours in prison due to overcrowding. But the troubles for the actress didn't end there. For several instances of buying liquor during the probation, and also refusing to engage in community service, Rodriguez was sentenced to 100 days in prison. She went to serve her sentence on December 24, 2007. However, again to overcrowding in prison, Michelle was released after only 17 days.
All my troubles seem so far away.
Paul McCartney, legendary British musician and performer, one of the founders of the Beatles, awarded the title of Knight and Commander of the Order of the British Empire. In the 60s, he was one of the first musicians to confess his drug addiction and began to express thoughts about the legalization of marijuana quite often. It was because of marijuana, which was banned in many countries, that Paul got into trouble with the law. In 1972, he was arrested and fined £800 in Sweden, and later fined another £100 for growing marijuana on a farm in Scotland. With such a personal history, the artist's management had some difficulty getting an agreement on a tour in conservative Japan in the early 1980s. Even the British government had to be involved. But upon arrival in Tokyo, the customs officers opened McCartney's suitcase and saw a bag of marijuana right on top, in full view. Until the final decision was made, the musician was imprisoned. Preparing to spend several years in prison, Paul McCartney tried to get used to Japanese food and refused the morning bread and coffee that Europeans should get. There was no special treatment to the world star. Paul slept on a mattress on the floor, washed himself with water from a toilet tank, and Paul's request to have a guitar and tape recorder in his cell was refused. as well as a pencil and paper. McCartney befriended 2 other prisoners. One was a murderer, the other was a drug suspect, and sang songs with them. Meanwhile, the artist's representatives made every effort to free him. As a result, Tokyo officials got tired of the international hype and decided to release McCartney after 10 days. Paul apologized for the disturbance, paid the Japanese managers $200,000 as a penalty for the failed tour, and left the country with his family. 4 years later, he was fined again for possession of marijuana in Barbados. And finally, Paul McCartney quit smoking weed in 2015 to set a good example for his grandchildren.
There are those who require alcohol to give them courage. I'm not one of them. Is it dry enough?
Sophie Loren, the Oscar-winning Italian beauty, recognized as one of the greatest actresses in cinema, also didn't escape jail. In the 70s, the Italian police opened a case against her husband, Carlo Ponti. He was charged with tax evasion and the withdrawal of capital from Italy. Their home, a 16th century villa located near Rome, got confiscated. Later, Sophie became a defendant in a tax evasion case. According to the authorities, the actress didn't mention part of her income in her tax return and thus owed a large amount to the state, and in addition, she was considered an accomplice of her husband. Having received French citizenship, the couple moved to Paris. Meanwhile, an Italian court indicted them in absentia. Carlo was sentenced to 4 years in prison and a fine, and Sophie got a month in prison. Eventually, they dropped the charges against Ponti, but Loren was nevertheless arrested in 1982 at a Rome airport. From there, the actress was sent to Caserta, where she was put in a women's prison in solitary confinement. Fans supported the actress by sending her flowers, and the French authorities sent a note of protest to the Italian Prime Minister. The President of France personally stood up for Loren, and she was eventually released ahead of schedule after 17 days. She went from prison straight to the airport to fly to Paris and told reporters that she was extremely disappointed with the actions of the Italian authorities. Over the next years, courts of various instances continued to investigate the actress's tax returns. The confiscated property was returned after 13 years, and the case was finally closed in 2013 when the court ruled out any responsibility for Loren.
What happens?
Well, it's an unwritten clause in our contract that anytime during training and fighting, you can die. That's a great possibility.
Mike Tyson, the award-winning American professional boxer, is known for his aggressive behavior in the ring. As a child, Mike, who grew up in poor areas of New York City, was caught in petty offenses. By the age of 13, he'd been arrested 38 times and sent to juvenile correction facilities several times. But Tyson got into serious trouble, having become an eminent boxer already. In 1991, at a rehearsal for the Miss Black America beauty pageant, he met 18-year-old Desiree Washington. The athlete invited the girl to a hotel room, and a week later, he was charged with rape. This case received wide media coverage. At the court hearings, evidence was presented of several cases of physical violence by Tyson against other women. However, the boxer himself did not admit his guilt and still claims that he did not rape the girl. It is worth noting that the lack of professionalism of the defense attorney, who had no previous experience in criminal cases and openly referred to Mike as an animal and a fool, plus there was only one black person on the jury. Therefore, Mike was sure of the guilty verdict, stating in his closing remarks that he was already ready for the worst. On February 10, 1992, the jury convicted him on most counts. Taking into account mitigating circumstances and other factors, the judge sentenced Tyson to 6 years in prison, 4 years probation, a fine of $30,000, and legal fees of $113,000. 3 years later, the boxer was released ahead of schedule for exemplary behavior. After that, Tyson returned to the ring, but was sent to prison twice more. He got 3.5 months for assaulting people who ran into his car in 1998, and a day for using drugs and driving while intoxicated in 2008.
Don't fuck up, or your mama will weep if she has to wheel your ass around every day the rest of your life.
50 Cent. Curtis James Jackson III, aka 50 Cent, is a successful American rapper and actor. He was born into a dysfunctional family in an equally dysfunctional neighborhood in New York City. Drugs, gunfights, and accidental killings were commonplace. To make money for new sneakers, the boy sold crack on the street. He bought himself a gun when he was 15. He soon came to the attention of the Drug Enforcement Administration and was arrested at the age of 19 for trying to sell cocaine to an undercover officer. The first time he was released, since the guy only acted as an intermediary, but got arrested a month later for possession of crack and heroin at home, as well as unregistered weapons. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison, but was released 6 months later due to an amnesty. The future rapper served his term in the so-called boot camp, in which he received a high school diploma. After release from prison and the birth of his son, Curtis decided to change his lifestyle. He took the nickname 50 Cent and focused on a music career, which incidentally turned out to be no less dangerous. Because of the rapper showdown, Curtis got shot, but he survived after a close call. Later, in 2002, the rapper was arrested for illegal possession of weapons, and in 2005, he was sentenced to 2 years of probation for assault. However, he avoided prison again and soon took up his acting and production career in earnest. Whose presence in our top 10 surprised you? And did you like the format of the video? Share in the comments. If you liked the video, leave a like and also subscribe to the channel so as not to miss anything interesting.